Is Voldemort actually afraid of Dumbledore? I mean, everybody seems to think so, but if he thinks that Dumbledore is wrong about love and that he himself knows more about magic than anybody else, then what exactly does he have to fear? Look, I know a lot of characters say this throughout the story, and I'm not saying that Voldemort shouldn't fear Dumbledore. He definitely should. Dumbledore is, other than possibly him, the most powerful wizard of the age. He's a brilliant strategist, and most importantly, he knows Voldemort. He knew him as Tom Riddle. He knew him when he was at Wool's orphanage. He even knows his full name, and with that can find his family and lineage just like Voldemort did himself. And most importantly of all, he can identify his style of magic just by looking at it, as evidenced by when he and Harry go to the cave in Half Blood Prince.
Wait a minute, what'd you just say? Say that again.
Yes, he can identify magic as Voldemort's just by looking at it. I suppose it's possible that both of them are capable of the ancient magic that's introduced in Hogwarts Legacy, but it's also possible that neither are, so either Dumbledore knows that Voldemort is capable of performing this ancient magic, or neither of them is, and he can still identify Voldemort's style just by looking at the magic. And it's not like the two of them are super close. By the time we get to Half Blood Prince, Voldemort is 70 and Dumbledore is 150, give or take a few years.
An astute observation has led to laughter.
And yes, he knew Tom Riddle for 7 years while he was teaching him at Hogwarts, but then he graduates, and honestly, I can't really imagine the two of them going to like the Leaky Cauldron or something and having a drink. I mean, nobody seems to want to have a drink with Dumbledore throughout the series, but in spite of all those rejections, I still can't really imagine Dumbledore going and having a drink with Voldemort. Unless. How have you been, Tom? Sure is nice to finally have a drink with someone. This was a mistake. But drink or no drink, after graduating, Voldemort just works at Borgin and Burke's and then disappears for at least 10 years. And when he comes back, his features are starting to become waxy and distorted, so Dumbledore is able to recognize him still, but imagine somebody who had never known Tom Riddle. That's kind of the point of why he disappears, so that when he returns, there aren't as many people who would remember him. But back to the original point of the video. If I'm making the argument for why Voldemort should fear Dumbledore, why am I saying that he doesn't? Well, first, he actually seeks out and goes to this interview with Dumbledore, even though he knows that his true purpose is to hide one of his Horcruxes in the Room of Requirement. And is this really the best plan that Voldemort can come up with to sneak into the castle? I mean, Sirius manages to sneak in and out of the castle without anybody knowing while he's the most wanted man in Britain. Are you telling me that Voldemort can't use those same secret passageways? I mean, his plan here is I'm going to interview with Dumbledore, and then at some point I'm going to sneak off into the castle so that I can hide this in the Room of Requirement. You know, but there is one other thing that Dumbledore is going to keep in mind. He believes that Voldemort opened the Chamber of Secrets. As soon as he starts sneaking off, you don't think Dumbledore is going to be suspicious of him? And just because it works doesn't mean that Voldemort isn't taking a huge risk here. I mean, sure, he's able to hide the diadem in the Room of Requirement, but at any point, Dumbledore could catch him with a Horcrux, and that is the last thing that Voldemort can have happen. Because as soon as Dumbledore finds out about the Horcruxes, then he's going to do everything in his power to destroy them. And if he actually wanted the job, he could have come back before Dumbledore was headmaster. Dippet would have fallen for his charms again, and then he could have had that influence that Dumbledore hypothesizes that he could want over the students as a professor. But he waits for Dumbledore to be headmaster, so he must have another use for him, something that he needs Dumbledore specifically to accomplish.
Wait, what'd you just say? Say that again.
So, what can this advantage be for Voldemort if Dumbledore is headmaster? So many people describe him as the best headmaster Hogwarts has ever had, but there's one characteristic with him that kind of brings out the worst in society. He's pro-Muggle-born rights, and while that is definitely the right side of history to be on, it still inspires hatred in people. And when somebody like Dumbledore gains power, there's going to be a reaction to it, and Voldemort can use that reaction. This is how Voldemort starts to gain a following. This is how he gets his Death Eaters, and with some of them, it's how he's able to create this loyalty as if they are in a cult. And he's only able to do that because he can take advantage of their hatred of muggles. Even the Riddle Horcrux says that he doesn't care about killing Muggleborns anymore. So he just wants to have this image as Lord Voldemort. And the only way that he can really, be seen as the Lord who will save them is if somebody like Dumbledore is showing them that the threat is there, that he is a savior for them. But that's just one example, and there aren't exactly a ton of examples of Dumbledore and Voldemort interacting, and that could certainly create an argument for him fearing Dumbledore, but the few limited interactions they do have kind of show that he doesn't really fear him. So, obviously, their first interaction is when Dumbledore gives Tom his letter to Hogwarts and tells him he's a wizard. Of course, Tom doesn't trust him and then demands that Dumbledore tell the truth to him. And, I don't know about you, but usually when I'm afraid of somebody, I don't go around issuing demands to them. And yes, while later in this conversation he does promise to do what Dumbledore's asking of him, not steal anymore, return what he's stolen, you also have to remember that in this moment, Dumbledore has just told Tom that he's a wizard, that he's as special as Tom has always felt he is destined to be. And we know that he has the ability to act as people want him to so that he can get what he wants. And there's nothing he's going to want more at this point in his life than to be special and to be a wizard. And while there's not as much of an interaction between them in Philosopher's Stone, Voldemort does plan to get Dumbledore out of the castle while he tries to steal the stone. And sure, it could be maybe because he's afraid of him, but at this point you have to remember he's less than the meanest ghost, and he only has Quirrell as an ally. And he could just be smart enough to know that, hey, I can't take on Dumbledore in this state, and Quirrell couldn't take him on in his wildest dreams, so let's just get him out of here. Plus, it's the end of the year, all the teachers are busy with exams, so there's less security around the castle. Even Ron and Harry are able to just sit outside the corridor until McGonagall finds them, so I think that's kind of why he would be doing the attack more at this time of year rather than fearing Dumbledore himself. And if you want to know why Voldemort always seems to attack at the end of the school year, I did make a video for that as well. I'll leave a card somewhere up here for that. And, it's more the question of, is he doing it because he's choosing to or because he can't? And that's what that video is going to be about. And then the other big interaction the two of them have is, during their duel back here in the ministry, and even then it kind of starts with a conversation. And yes, Voldemort is trying to kill, while Dumbledore seems more trying to disarm Voldemort and have him arrested almost. But at the same time, Voldemort doesn't totally flee when he knows that he can't win here. He possesses Harry just to kind of challenge Dumbledore here to, kill him if death means nothing, as if the two are continuing their conversation from before the duel. "You do not seek to kill me, Dumbledore," called Voldemort, his scarlet eyes narrowed over the top of the shield. "Above such brutality, are you? We both know that there are other ways of destroying a man, Tom," Dumbledore said calmly. Jeez, why is he yelling at him here? Continuing to walk towards Voldemort as though he had not a fear in the world, as though nothing had happened to interrupt his stroll up the hall. "Merely taking your life would not satisfy me, I admit." "There's nothing worse than death, Dumbledore," snarled Voldemort. "You are quite wrong," said Dumbledore. This interaction kind of reminds me of another villain who was quite successful.
You didn't think I'd risk losing the battle for Gotham's soul in a fistfight with you.
So, if after all this I've managed to convince you that Voldemort doesn't actually fear Dumbledore, then why do so many think he does, both in and outside the story? Well, at the end of the day, I think the biggest reason why would be because Voldemort actually kind of understands Dumbledore, and being Voldemort, coming to the wrong conclusion because of it. And this one thing is what Dumbledore keeps closest to the chest his whole life, that he doesn't trust himself with power, that he even fears what he could do with it. And Voldemort is smart, he knows that at some point in his life Dumbledore should have been Minister of Magic. And, if he's given it any thought, then I'm sure he has his theories as to why he never was. Where Voldemort makes his mistake, though, is he comes to the conclusion that love is making Dumbledore weak, that he doesn't take this power because of his ability to love, and therefore he doesn't have to fear him because he could be powerful if love didn't hold him back. And because of that, he really has no reason to fear Dumbledore and just views him as a weak old fool who could be extremely powerful. We also know that he'll take care of things himself, and quickly, if it's enough of a problem for him. Trying to kill Harry when he's a baby proves that. But he never personally tries to kill Dumbledore. Yeah, there's the plan to have him killed, but that's as much to punish Lucius Malfoy as it is to, see Dumbledore be dead. And, I think it's just because at the end of the day, he never really sees Dumbledore as an equal or really even a threat to him. He's just an old fool who he can use to gain more power, and that's kind of the beginning of his downfall, because Dumbledore is the best one to lead the charge against him and the perfect mentor for the chosen one who will be able to finish what Dumbledore never could. I just don't see it being a power thing at the end of the day. For as powerful as Dumbledore is, that shouldn't really scare Voldemort, I think Fred Shapiro said it best when he said the world's best swordsman isn't going to fear the second best. He's going to fear the worst, because there's no telling what that idiot will do. Except, I guess Voldemort doesn't really fear Wormtail either, just one last thing to chew on as I take a little shot at Wormtail. That's always fun to do. But, let me know down in the comments what you guys think of this today. Did Voldemort actually fear Dumbledore? Did I change anybody's mind on this? But if you guys enjoyed today, please drop a like, subscribe if you want more like this, and I'll see you next time on STV.